Hello, I'm Ellen Whittemore. I'm a former Global Gaming Women board member and longtime co chair of Kick Up Your Heels. I'm very happy that today I get to talk to Patty Becker, the creator of Kick Up Your Heels, and provide our audience with some information about that wonderful event. I know this is a little unusual, Patty, but not everybody knows you. We were just chatting about the fact as the longer we've been in the gaming industry, how pleased we are there are more and more women, but how that means we know fewer and fewer of the women. So, can you just give us a little bit of information about your background, Patty?
Yes. I grew up in Las Vegas when it was a very small town. I went to UNLV and UNR and graduated undergraduate school at the ripe age of 20 and was a second grade school teacher here in Las Vegas. But I always had, I wanted to be a lawyer. When I was a child, after I had read To Kill a Mockingbird, people would say, "What do you want to do?" And my response was always, "Be a lawyer." And everyone would always laugh. I'd never even met a lawyer. I had no idea what lawyers did, but I went off. I left teaching profession, went to law school, and by the time I was 24, I had a law degree.
That's fabulous.
So let's see. Then I spent my first 10 years in government. I was the chief, or I was a law clerk for the Chief Justice of the Nevada Supreme Court. Then I was state industrial attorney, and then I went to work for Richard Bryan when he was attorney general, and I was assigned to the Gaming Control Board and Gaming Commission, and I worked my way up to being chief deputy attorney general, and then he was elected governor, and he appointed me to the Gaming Control Board. So I was the first female on the Gaming Control Board, and that was within the entire country because at that time, Nevada was all there really was when it came to gaming. Much to my surprise, I became like a media figure overnight, and I am fairly shy by nature, and that just took me aback. And the surprise to me was that the men who were the leaders in the industry felt so overwhelmed that a woman could sit on the board. Like this was going to change everything for the industry. And they were that apprehensive. And it was hard. It was a tough job. And so after 10 years in government, I went to work for Harrah's, and I worked for Harrah's for 9 years as a senior vice president and general counsel. I then went back to government and was chief of staff for Governor Bob Miller. I then ran my own consulting business that included being on the board of directors for 3 gaming and lottery companies and consulting on regulatory and compliance issues. One of my clients, Aladdin Gaming, convinced me to come back in house. So I went with Aladdin Gaming to help them open, and I was there for 6 years. And after leaving Aladdin Gaming, I was doing compliance work, working for myself. But by that time, I had been in the industry, like I'd been 30 years out of law school, and I felt like I wanted to give back. I'm I'm a big believer in government, and so I went and I became the executive director for the International Gaming Institute at UNLV and a distinguished professor. And when I was in that, I stayed there 5 years. And in the fourth year of my service, I worked and created Kick Up Your Heels.
And what was your thesis or your premise for creating that event? What did you want to accomplish?
So a lot of times I was the only woman in the room, but often I was isolated and lonely. It was hard because there weren't any support systems in place. And the more women I talked to, and as more women rose up the corporate ladder, I just felt that we all needed to interact more. We needed to know each other better, but none of us really had the time. Outside, we had work, we had kids, we had parents. You know, it was hard to find time to get to know each other. So because I was still at the university, I decided to do an event that would raise funds for educational programs for women, but would also provide a place for all of us to get together, meet new people, see old friends, and I came up with the concept of kick up your heels. And one of the things I didn't say that Ellen, I know that you know this, is that my parents sold shoes for a living. Most people assume that they were lawyers or doctors. No, they sold shoes for a living. So the shoe part of it to me is near and dear to my heart. So we called it Kick Up Your Heels. And I had a friend who used to live next door to me, Valerie Glenn, who ran an advertising agency. I asked her to do the first invitation, which was great. I got Caesars to host, and they did it in the presidential suite. But what I wanted is I wanted a place for the women, and I wanted both women in government, in other words, the agents for the Gaming Control Board that had moved up the ranks, along with women in the industry who had moved up the ranks, to feel like they were visiting me in my home. I wanted it to be warm and friendly and not intimidating. So, on the first invitation, actually, the first few years, the suggested price of admission was the cost of your last pair of shoes. So, if you had just recently bought flip flops, you could donate $20 and come. And if you happen to have bought Christian Louboutins, you could donate $850 and come. Whatever felt comfortable. And as part of the theme of having it be like you were visiting me in my home, I had a little to go bag as you left. Kind of like when you go to somebody's home, sometimes you get a little gift when you're leaving. And in there, my mother in law had made stiletto cookies, and they were decorated like leopards and zebras. And my mother in law is a fabulous cook. I am not. And we put them and wrapped them and put ribbons around them, and we had a little to go bag for everyone. And people just had a delightful, wonderful time.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at one of those first events. And as you said, it was really lonely in the gaming industry at that time for women in the industry. Patty and I have a similar experience with being from law school, being from middle class parents, working our way through school and having a family that we adore. And my children's shoes were all purchased at Patty's parents' shoe store when they were little. So we have both come from humble beginnings, and you particularly have just hit it out of the park. Um, when did the global gaming? Well, you mentioned you were with IGI
Mhm.
and that you started Kick Up Your Heels while you were the executive director there. When did it become part of Global Gaming Women, and what was the background there? Who helped you there to make it what it is today?
So I had invited the women from AGA to attend the event. And sometime after the event and before like February of the following year, and I think the event was in September or October, they contacted me and said, we would like to do a, a gaming initiative for women within the AGA. And would you help? Would you be part of it? And of course, I said yes. And they had meetings throughout the following spring. And the following October at G2E, they actually announced Global Gaming Women. So it hadn't really even been created.
Mhm.
And so it was prior to Global Gaming Women. And then I have to say, those women at AGA really, really felt for the cause. They helped promote it, and they worked very diligently. And it was probably in the third year or second year that AGA had, we wanted to be able to raise the funds for education programs and keep them within GGW. So they filed the 501c3 for GGW's educational fund, charitable educational fund. And then we transferred everything from Kick Up Your Heels over to GGW. And so even though they kind of assisted the first few years, it wasn't, I mean, it did start to raise funds, but it was pretty small in the beginning.
Yeah. What the first year that you did it, what did you raise?
Oh, I think we raised, oh, at the most, maybe $9,000, and I was probably the primary donor of
Yeah.
that amount.
We all bought
But
cheap shoes.
but we did have 100 attendees,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Which was great
it
for
was.
the first ever event of its kind. And now I think Kick Up Your Heels is, the preeminent event, one of the marquee events at G2E, and we
Mhm.
we have to turn people away from that event. So it's really grown quite a bit. Um, Starting something like that is never easy. Who helped you? Was it just you in the first time?
When I was with I had an assistant, Nakia Jackson Hale, and, to this day, I always invite Nakia to kick up your heels, and she comes, and, she did assist, but there is a caveat that, I was there for 5 years, and during that time period, Nakia had 3 babies.
Ah,
So there was an ebb and flow to her availability,
yeah.
but she got the concept, she understood, and she bought into it, so she was helpful. And then I contacted somebody at every major gaming company and asked for a list of, I think, VP and above of women, or if not, if they didn't have any, which many did not, who were their top ranking women. And I reached out personally to them to invite them. I reached out to the women at the Gaming Control Board to invite them. So I made calls and I sent emails. It was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. Where did you held the first one at Caesars, and then there have been a number of locations where we've held the event since then. Where else has the event been?
So the first 5 years were the hardest.
Mm,
And one was at the Wynn, two were at Caesars, but two were at Stratosphere.
okay.
And I want to say that those were the ones that you really had to almost, it was hard to get people to attend. And we weren't raising a lot of money. However, by the third year, like I think it was 2014, well, I can't quite remember, like the third or fourth year, we had education programs in place. So we were doing and we were doing leadership conferences.
Mhm.
And Phyllis Gilland co chaired the education committee with me. And we had created with Ann Simmons the pyramid
Mhm.
classes. But once we offered those classes as GGW, and remember, our classes are always free to the participants, then both the industry and the other women saw what was going on, and it was easier to raise money. So the first 5 years were hard.
Mhm.
Then the middle 5 years were pretty good. Like, I recall the 5th year it was at Cosmo, we had 250 women in attendance, and we raised $90,000. So you can see where it went from 1 to 5 years. And then we had our middle, I call them 5 years. And then 6 years ago, Ellen Whittemore became general counsel of Wynn and offered not just to sponsor, but to co-chair the committee, and then has continued to sponsor. So we had a home. I didn't have to spend months looking for a sponsor. And and that, I just think that's when it really took off.
I do think the location and
Mhm.
the quality of the event at Wynn, and I know I'm a little bit biased having just recently retired from that position, did help. But I do think you made a point that I think is really the most important is that once people saw that the money was going to a good cause, i.e.,
Mhm.
education for women in their companies
Mhm.
and throughout the industry, the interest by senior level management became much more apparent, and getting sponsors from, let's be real, male dominated executive suites became a much easier sell because they had seen some of their own employees go through that educational program that you all worked so hard to create, and they saw the value in it. And I do think the other thing that I think that many of the men in the gaming industry recognized was the networking opportunity that had been created by Kick Up Your Heels.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you know, I there was a executive, a CEO of a large publicly traded company, not Win, who mentioned to me one year that he was going to tell every senior woman in his company to attend the event, and he was going to be there, and he was going to use it as his own opportunity to network with his employees. So your idea to put the women together in that small intimate setting has certainly blossomed into an incredible event that raises not only a significant amount of money for global gaming women, but allows women to meet each other in a casual, welcoming environment. So, did you have any, other than people not knowing what it was, were there any challenges? Did anybody really resent what you were doing? Did you have scheduling issues? Did you have to convince people that this was our date?
Oh, it was interesting because, for a few years, the AGA had their Gaming Hall of Fame. For a while, it was a dinner, now it's a cocktail
Mhm.
party event on the same night, and then, somewhere in there, it was probably the 8th or ninth year they gave up, and they said because I guess they were getting such feedback that, "No, we were already booked for Kick Up Your Heels, or we're going to Kick Up Your Heels," that they decided to do the Hall of Fame on a different night, and I that was like an awakening moment for me.
You'd made it. The organization
Mhm,
had made it and the
mhm,
event had made it.
mhm.
Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently than how you did it?
Ah, it's a good question, but I'm a real believer. Remember, I had been practicing law for probably 35 years by the time I created this. And one of the things I've learned in my career is that you can't second guess what you did.
Mhm.
And even when you make a monumental mistake, you suck it up and you move forward.
You just fix it.
You just have to move forward. So there's nothing that I can look back and say, no, I should have done this or I should have done that. But one thing that I did do is because it was such a lot of work and so hard, is that I did find, especially in those years, I would say the year, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 to 9, I found people to help with the hard.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think at a point where GGW became more professional and had some full-time staff, they were able to help as well with that. And then there were women who were willing to sit on the committee with you and
Mhm,
make some of those asks. I think one of the most difficult things for women, at least in my experience, and particularly those in the legal profession, we have a hard time asking people
mhm.
to support things. And I think you know, you encouraged women in marketing and in sales to join that committee, and they were much better at selling it than I know that I was, because they had that personality. So
Those
I
girls rule.
they did.
They
They
really
did.
do.
They
Because I
did.
agree that where I went initially were to people that I was doing something for. So I went
Yep.
to my clients,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they really supported the cause. And then, I would get asked to attend some kind of function or speak at an event, and I didn't take any money. And what I would do as soon as the next year when Kick Up Your Heels came along, whoever had asked me, I would send them a request for a donation for Kick Up Your Heels.
You're such a
So
smart woman. You're such a smart cookie. Cookie.
Ugh,
I think that when you talk to people and they express the importance of Kick Up Your Heels to them and in their life, and they look forward to it, and it's their go-to event at G2E, I think it's easy for us to recognize the importance of that event to others. What has it done for you? What does it mean to you?
oh. Well, I have one comment where things got better. After W started, it was like the following year, because I was still making those damn cookies, and my mother-in-law had aged out, and it took a lot of time and effort. I am not a cook. Anyway, she called me up, and she worked for a big company, and she said, "Oh, we'll do the cookies this year." I could have climbed through the phone and hugged her, but the W women really got it and started
Helping.
helping.
Mhm.
And I think what it means to me is, first of all, I love still seeing old friends, truly seeing old friends. And then I love seeing the next, I would say generation, but in reality, let's get real. I'm old enough where it's the next two generations of women. They are gutsy, goal oriented. They're charming. I just love meeting them.
You know what, you and I have talked about this as well. I think that those you're right, I'm in the same age. Those next couple of generations of the women who are going to be leaders in the industry and some of who already are. It's wonderful to see them, but I think one of the things that's rewarding for me, and I know it is as well, they're appreciative of the doors that we opened,
Mhm,
and we both did.
mhm.
That goes, it's just it there weren't women. You were the only woman in the room, and I was in the room next door. I mean, and you're only you don't. There were no women in the gaming industry
Well,
when
and
we started
people don't, Ellen and I are at this point very close friends. We have become close friends in the last
10 years,
10
maybe.
years.
Yeah,
Prior to that, we knew each other. We would always say hello to each other. We felt warm towards each other. But there's an ebb and flow to life, and you've got kids, you've got parents, you've got spouses, and you have this monumental job. So you're trying to survive. And so it's been really nice to get to know women of my own almost age
mhm,
or ilk in a much better fashion through Kick Up Your Heels.
yeah, and that's where I think one of the things that through Kick Up Your Heels, we create those environments for people to meet each other, but also global gaming women, the lean in circles and the mentorship programs, because we didn't have anything like that. There wasn't an opportunity for Patty and I to just go have a cup of coffee someday. There just you didn't have that built-in sense of place, and
Mhm,
you're out there scratching your own way through. So
mhm.
yeah, it's been wonderful to become close friends, but I think that we have facilitated, I hope, uh, other women to become closer friends earlier in their careers than you and I were able to be.
I concur. And that was one of the goals of Kick Up Your Heels was camaraderie.
Yeah. Where do you see Kick Up Your Heels in the next few years? How much longer are you going to keep doing it?
Oh, you know, well, every year now. So after when I left the GGW board, they initiated the Patty Becker Pay It Forward Award.
Mhm.
And so I have stayed involved with Kick Up Your Heels and will continue to. I donate to them, I give my time to them because it means something to me. And every year I don't select the honorees, but I have a suite at the Win and I have a makeup artist come in and I invite this year's honorees and any past honorees to come by just to say congratulations to the women. And I get to know them on a little bit better level. And for Kick Up Your Heels in the future, I don't think it's up to me because even the last few years, I didn't decide things should be on Instagram. At first, I was like, "Oh, look at this."
Yeah.
And now I watch the GW Instagram feed all the time.
Yeah.
And, I didn't come up with some of the newer, more interesting ideas for Kick Up Your Heels. And I just think the next generation will take it where they want to take it. The only thing that I would continue to hope is that we remember that it's not just about fundraising, even though it's the primary fundraiser for global gaming women. It's also about camaraderie.
That's right.
And so we don't want it to be so big that we lose that warmth and intimacy.
Oh, I agree with you. It is such a fun time to just get to meet people and reconnect. And G2E is the perfect forum for it, with everybody coming in throughout the United States and actually internationally. And the small group of us that went to Caesars has now grown to 800, 900 women and men. It used to be very unusual for a man to come. Now, we have a number of male attendees, and we let them join us.
And a lot of CEOs come.
They do. They do. So, well, Patty, thank you for sharing with us. Is there anything else about Kick Up Your Heels or GGW that you want to mention that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, um, there is one thing that I would like to say. Um, I would like to say that at this stage of life, when you've worked as hard as you and I worked, and as hard as the women who probably are going to be watching this are working,
Mhm.
I want you to know that at this age, I still do 3 compliance committees, but it's not full-time work, and it's, so that I mentally stay stimulated and within the industry. But my time is spent reading, Pilates, going to the beach, traveling, enjoying life. And I truly believe that this part of my life is so much better because I know how hard I worked for it.
Mhm.
So if you're in the midst of that, how hard you're working for it, I promise you, you will so appreciate this part of life.
Oh, that's wonderful advice, Patty. And Patty has a wonderful husband and a wonderful son and lots of friends and family that she spends time traveling with and enjoying life, and she deserves it. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Thank you.